Hello and welcome back. Now, I don't know if you know this, but I hate trading in fantasy, and that probably stems from getting relentless trade requests sent my way during the first few weeks of the season. But still, I've run 8 teams over the last year, and I've made exactly 1 trade in all of those leagues. But I know for many of you, that's the fun in fantasy hockey. So today's video, we're going to look at something that I attempted to put together 2 or 3 weeks ago but couldn't finish, and we'll look at the top 5 buy low candidates as of right now. For most of this, we'll be comparing completeness rating from last year and or their 5-year average with what the player is doing this year. And we'll go over a lot more details, and there will be some honorable mentions at the end, so stay tuned for that. But let's kick things off with a data draft favorite in Chris Letang. Now, Letang is one of the guys that I always look at for his completeness. Lots of hits, lots of blocks. You can see last year, 92nd percentile in blocks, hits, 94th in power play points, and that's the main reason for the drop-off. He went from 94th percentile down to 34th. He had 0 power play points when this was put together. He got 1 power play point, I believe, on Monday or Tuesday night when the Penguins finally scored on the power play for the first time in 10, 11 games, whatever it was. But he is usually that power play staple. As of, everybody knows they bring in Erik Karlsson, so he's getting the power play time, but that didn't work. So maybe now they're going to start utilizing Letang a little bit more on the power play, and this would be the perfect opportunity to buy low before his power play numbers shoot up. Now, in 27 games this year, 2 goals, 12 assists, a power play point that came in the last game, 52 shots, 38 hits, and 44 blocks. You compare that to last year, 27 games, 2 goals, same as this year, 14 assists, so a little bit shy of that this year, 6 power play points, 54 shots, almost identical there, 68 hits though, and 47 blocks. So you can see that he went from 2.53 hits per game down to 1.46, so a little bit of a drop off in hitting, and that's probably due to ice time. He was the main guy getting 22 plus minutes a night last year, and he's now splitting that time with Karlsson, so that means fewer hits. But all in all, not that far off his point total, half a point per game compared to 0.64. The goal total is down about half from last year. These are positional percentiles this year. Last year, this was all for everybody in the league. So that's a little bit of a different calculation. So that will skew the results just slightly. But we're still looking at the same overall trend, a drop in power play numbers, a little bit of a drop in hitting, and then a drop in goals as well. Pretty much the assists are right there. The shots are a little bit lower as well. You're looking at, 0.6, 0.7 shots per game fewer than last year. So this could be a nice time to scoop him up as they start to work on that power play and hopefully get it back on the right track. They might look to Letang, who's kind of their security blanket there. And you can see here he's a very consistent player in his completeness rating, 86, 83, 86, 85, currently sitting at a 71. So this would be a nice time to buy low on Letang if you want that peripheral coverage and if you believe in him getting some more power play time. Now, up next, we have a guy that I watch on a regular basis, and this does pain me to put him on here just because he hasn't been his usual self, and that is Igor Shesterkin. So you can notice his, couple seasons ago, Vezina Trophy season, 935 save percentage. Last year, 916, not bad. This year, he's down to a 902. So this is a huge drop-off, and this is definitely something that we have to look at. So this year, 17 starts, 10 wins, 3.02 goals against, and a 902 save percentage. Last year on the Goalie Hub, he was ranked 6th. This year, he's ranked 14th, and this was without Saturday night versus Ottawa and Tuesday night versus Toronto, where he gave up 6 goals in each of those games. I believe 6 and 5. I think there was an empty netter in one of them. But he's given up 4 or more goals in each of the last 3 games and 7 out of 17 starts this year. So that is definitely problematic, and it's worrisome if you're a Shesterkin owner. It's not necessarily the end of the world because Jonathan Quick is playing so well if you're a Rangers fan. But one of the things that we have to notice here, over the past number of years, he's been going in the right direction, going up every single season, taking about a 4 or 5 point jump every year. So maybe this is a year for some regression. Now you add to that, I believe he had a child in the summer, so maybe he's not sleeping well. And that could be, contributing to a lack of focus, just ever so slightly bringing his numbers down. But the New York Rangers are still a pretty decent defensive team. They have dropped a little bit over the past a couple of weeks as they've been giving up a bunch of goals, and it has a lot to do with Shesterkin's play in terms of giving up a lot of those goals, but they have been a little bit more loose defensively, and they'll have to tighten that up, but they are still one of the top 2 or 3 teams in the NHL. They will figure it out, and he will get a ton of the starts down the stretch. So if you believe in bounce back Igor Shesterkin, now would be the perfect time to grab him when his numbers do look bad on paper, and somebody might be frustrated owning him after the last couple of performances that he's put up. I personally am hoping that he comes back to form. I don't know if we'll get back to the .935 save percentage Shesterkin. I think you will see that in stretches, but overall, I think his numbers have to go up a little bit from where they are. You can see he was an 86 last year. He's a 68 this year. I would probably split the difference and put him in the mid 70s, and that would be a nice healthy bump if you pick him up right now. But on to number 3, we'll look at another data draft favorite, and that is John Carlson. So this is going to be tied directly to our next player, who I'll just spoiler alert, it's Alex Ovechkin, but we'll get to that in just a second. But first, John Carlson, you can notice the main drop-off here is his goal production from 0.23 goals per game to 0.04. So he's gone from, at this point last year, 25 games played, he had 8 goals, 11 assists, 6 power play points, 88 shots, and 29 hits and 61 blocks. Now, this year, he's at 1 goal, 14 assists, 4 power play points, 54 shots, 11 hits, and 57 blocks. So what you're looking at is a drop in goal production. You're looking at a little bit of a drop in shot production, 3.1 down to 2.26. And he stopped hitting quite a bit. So half a hit per game has come off of his average. So he is still blocking shots at a really nice pace for you. He is still getting some assists, actually getting a little bit more assists than last year, 14 at this point compared to 11. And the power play numbers aren't terrible, as he does have 4 power play points. But the goals aren't there, and the shots aren't as high as they were last year. You would like to see a little bit more hitting from him, but he took a slap shot to the face last year. Maybe that's making him a little gun shy at this point in the year. But the reason you own him on pretty much every team over the last number of years is his incredible consistency. 80, 84, 82, 82, 83. He's currently sitting at a 76. So if you think he's going to regress up towards his average, that's the reason you would buy low on him right now. And this is a point in the season where the Caps power play at various points over the last week has been the worst power play in the NHL, which is incredible to say, and that cannot possibly last for much longer given the talent that they have on the ice and the fact that Ovechkin, we will get to in just a second, has not popped off. So this would be a nice buy low opportunity on John Carlson. A lot of people probably are, frustrated owning him if they'd picked him as their D1 or D2. I own him in a couple of leagues. I'm not that frustrated because I do have Rasmus Dahlin in that league, so he's kind of carrying my defensive load. But for John Carlson, this would be an opportunity to grab him before that power play starts to take a tick up. The point production is still relatively close, but you're looking for a little bit more goals, a little bit more shots, and some power play production bumping up a little bit as they start to figure it out. Now, Spencer Carberry was a power play coach in Toronto. That should have been a point of emphasis coming into this year, but for whatever reason, he's focused on defense, and that's helped them win games. But if they can pair that defense with a nice power play, that will help them stay where they are in the standings. So hopefully they can get that figured out. And if you want to grab Carlson before they do that, that would be a nice pickup. But seeing as how we're talking about the Caps, let's move it on over to Ovechkin. Now, last year, he was a little bit above a point per game, 0.58 goals per game. Compare that with 0.22 this year and a 0.65 point per game average. So a lot lower in both respects. So that is the main reason for concern. Is he's a goal scorer by trade. He's obviously, I think he's still 69 goals behind Wayne Gretzky. So he's chasing history right now, and everyone is expecting him to score goals. Maybe the pressure is getting to him a little bit. But on top of that, you're getting a little bit fewer hit production out of him. So about 0.7 hits per game fewer than last year, which is a little bit troubling because that is also a staple of his game. The shots are still pretty much there. He did drop off a little bit from 4 shots a game to down to 3.65, so not crazy. You're still getting some shot volume out of him, and he did have a game where he shot 14 times in one game earlier this year. That was after a very poor start to the season where he wasn't shooting at all, so he can do it when he wants to. You are still getting the same amount of assist coverage. The power play production is still kind of there. He does have 5 power play points on the season. But if you look at the last year's totals, 13 goals by this point in the season, 12 assists, 25 points, 12 power play points, and 69 hits. You compare that with this year, 5 goals, 11 assists, 16 points, 5 on the power play, 90 shots. So pretty close in terms of shot volume, but a little bit lower. And then 47 hits is a little bit lower in terms of hits as well. So we'll get to in a little bit another reason why you should pick up Ovechkin. But before we do that, let's go to number 1 and take a look at the guy that I've been trying to target in a couple different leagues and had no success so far. And that is Matthew Tkachuk. This is pretty obvious. Anybody who's paying attention is floating some trade offers out there for Tkachuk. Last year, 1.38 points per game. And it wasn't just last year. It was the year before as well when he was in Calgary. He was still around that pace. 0.51 goals per game, half a goal per game pace. That's what you're owning him for. He was 100th percentile or 99th in all of these offensive metrics. Shots were above 4.46 power play points. Compare that with this year, he's down a lot. So he's down almost half in terms of his point production. The goal production is way down, 0.15 goals per game. He's only got 5 goals on the year in 28 games. The assists are a little bit down, but they're not crazy down, 0.58 compared to 0.87. The shot volume is pretty close, so you're still getting that out of him. The power play production has been cut in half as well. And the hitting has come up a little bit. So he's getting frustrated, I guess, and he's starting to throw his weight around a little bit. Of the two, Brady is the bigger hitter in terms of Tkachuk's, whereas Matthew is usually the goal scorer and point producer. But for whatever reason this year, it's not happening for him, and we will get to that in just a second. But if we look at his numbers last year, 28 games, at that point in the season, 14 goals, 25 assists, 39 points, 12 on the power play. He was 7th in NHL scoring at this point last year. Compare that to this year, 5 goals, 15 assists, 20 points. So well under a point per game, only 6 power play points, so exactly half. The shot totals are almost identical. 106 shots this year, 107 last year. A little bit more hitting and a little exactly the same amount of blocks. So pretty much what you're seeing is a ton of shot volume that he's just not capitalizing on. And when we look at what we're talking about here in terms of advanced metrics, goals above expected, he leads the league in terms of negative goals above expected, or in terms of players who are expected to score and not quite doing it yet. So that 4.7 shooting percentage definitely factors in. He's still shooting the puck. He's still getting chances. They're just not going in for him. And that can't last. One thing that I wanted to note, Anders Lee was going to be a part of this video when I was putting it together 2 or 3 weeks ago. He was ice cold. He was number 1 on this list, and then he started to score. I believe he had 3 goals in the following week, and then he's been picking it up since then. So now his shooting percentage is up to 11.3%. That was also down in the 1 or 2% range. So this could be a case where you pick up Tkachuk now, and he starts to climb up this board and score some goals. Now here's Ovechkin. This is what I was talking about before. He's also 6th on this board, so not great in terms of him getting the puck luck. His shooting percentage is slightly higher, but still, he's expected to put in a lot more goals. He's getting the chances. You can see him, Lee, and Tkachuk all the highest on this board in terms of expected goals per 60. And then Lee has started to score already a little bit, although he can still dig his way out of this. But you still have these two guys who are, well below expected in terms of what they should be producing. And this would be an opportunity to get them both, especially for Ovechkin before that power play starts to tick up, and for Tkachuk before they start to increase their power play numbers and before he starts to turn this around, because this is only a matter of time. Now, one thing I wanted to bring up is honorable mentions. There's a couple of other names that we can talk about here. What you're seeing on the left is their difference between their 22-23 completeness rating and their 23-24 completeness rating. You can see Chris Letang made both of these. That's why he's on this list, and you saw him earlier. Tim Stützle, half a goal per game last year versus 0.27 goals per game this year. So almost half of his goal production. 0.4 hits per game lower this year than last year, and he's at the same point per game pace. He's at 1.18 this year compared to 1.15. So the point production's there. He's just kind of converted a bunch of goals into assists. I would definitely look at him in terms of increasing his goal production, but he's not quite as complete as he was last year. Last year, he was an 86, I believe, on the completeness rating. Now he's in the high 70s. So or 89 actually. You're looking at it right there on the screen. So he was one of the most complete players on the hub last year. This year he's come down a bit to a 77. A lot of that has to do with goal production and hitting. But I don't necessarily think he's floundering right now, so you're probably not going to be able to buy low on him. In terms of Sergachev, we know the narrative last year. He got the power play one time when Victor Hedman was out, and he was very good, peripheral-wise in the first place. So when you pair those two together, his rating was inflated last year. This is probably what you can expect from him. He is still getting a couple of power play points, and you will see Victor Hedman down here as well. We'll get to that in a second, but I think for both of these guys, it's just an anomaly where last year Sergachev got the power play time. Usually Victor Hedman gets that power play time. This is a 3-year average versus 23-24 rating. So Hedman usually got that power play time and usually was hitting a little bit more than he is now. So that's the main reason for his drop off. But he is still really productive. Victor Hedman is, I believe, 0.93 points per game right now, which puts him 4th or 5th in the NHL in terms of defenseman scoring. So he is still getting it done. The power play numbers are there. He's just hitting a little bit less. So he is still productive, and so is Sergachev, just not quite as productive as what he was last year. We talked about John Carlson. In terms of Mikko Rantanen, this is, again, one of those situations where you're not going to buy low because he is still really productive. But last year, 1.28 point per game. This year, 1.15. Last year, 0.67 goals per game. This year, 0.44. And the shooting is down from 3.73 to 3.07. So just a little bit. He went through a dry spell there where he didn't have a goal in 7 or 8 games. He broke that the other night with a goal and 2 assists. So I don't have any reason to worry about Rantanen if you own him. I happen to own him, and I was perfectly fine with the peripherals he was putting up and the shot volume and everything else. But it is noteworthy to notice that he is scoring a little bit less in terms of goals and shooting a little bit less than last year. Now, in terms of difference from 3-year average, this is an anomaly. I ran this through my data draft GPT, and it found the wrong number for this. Darnell Nurse's actual average is a 78.48, so he's right on target for that, and you're getting a ton of hits and blocks out of him, just not a ton of offensive production as he's not the power play quarterback. We've gone over Ovechkin, and now let's get to Mika Zibanejad. So when I was putting this video together a couple of weeks ago, this is what it looked like for Zibanejad. So in 23-24 stats, if I can get it to pop up here, 16 games at the time that I was putting this together, 2 goals, 8 assists, 10 points, 6 power play points, a power play goal, a shorthanded point, and a game winner. He had 4.5% shooting. So in the 11 games since then, 6 goals, 7 assists, 13 points, 6 more power play points, and he had an 8-game point streak, and he's only gone 1 game out of those 11 without a point. So the reason why I'm bringing this up is if you can get out in front of this. Now, I obviously didn't have the opportunity to record this video. Things were very busy. We had a death in the family and a lot going on, so I wasn't able to put the video together a couple of weeks ago. But the point of this is, if you can get out in front of this right now, you can get some of these guys at value, and then they will pop off, and you will reap that benefit of, the 11 games since then. He's got 13 points and 6 on the power play, 6 goals. So a lot of that has come in terms of regressing upward, and you're reaping the benefits if you can get out in front of it. So pay attention to the guys in this video. If you can grab one of them in a trade, especially if you can do a 2-for-1 trade where you're trading 2 lesser players for 1 elite level player, that usually works out for you if you're getting the better player in the deal. So that's the way I would approach it if you're looking to trade for one of these players that I mentioned in this video. But that's going to do it for this one. Hopefully you got some good information out of this. If you did, leave me a comment in the comments section below. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.